The show is not for everyone. It's for anyone who wants to listen, but it's not for everyone. If you like your religion reduced down to easy-to-swallow dogmas, where the Bible or the pastor or the church always clearly says, then this show is not for you. This show is for the wanderers, the seekers, the skeptics, the ex-evangelicals, the spiritual but not religious, the religious but not spiritual, the crystal girlies, the deconstructionists, the misfits, punks, and problem children of the religious world. On this show, we cut the crap, lay it all on the table, and let all of us decide where we go from there. Also, we swear on this one. So buckle the fuck up, because here we fucking go. Welcome to Cut the Crap, an intentionally heretical podcast where we try to have honest and non-dogmatic conversations about deep and important spiritual topics. I am Pastor Trey Comstock. With me in the studio, as ever, is
Pastor Emily Larson,
Anthony Malo.
And this week, in keeping with the season, in fact, this is coming out on St. Nicholas's Day, on December the 6th, we are going to talk about holidays, syncretism, and paganism. So we're going to begin with a short piece by me entitled Santa Claus, Saturnalia, and St. Nick Punches a Guy. My favorite St. Nicholas story has nothing to do with children, gifts, or jolliness. Historically, the actual St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, from the late 3rd to the mid-4th century, gets included in some, but not all, list of attendees at the Council of Nicaea, of Nicene Creed fame. Later legend developed that St. Nicholas, an apparently passionate defender of orthodoxy, open palm slapped a follower of the heretic Arius and got in some trouble. However, this further developed into an objectively way more fun version where good St. Nick close fist punched Arius himself and got chucked into jail for the assault and miraculously escapes. This leads to an interesting and seasonally appropriate question. How did the heretic assaulting St. Nicholas of Myra from modern-day Turkey transform into the jolly, corpulent, North Pole-dwelling gift giver? One part, the gifts, connect back to actual St. Nicholas tradition. Our friend Nick ends up the patron saint of children, in part because he provided secretly for 3 young women. They found themselves poor. Their father could not provide dowries for them, so, due to the customs of the time, they faced a life as unmarried sex workers. So, St. Nicholas threw a bag of gold surreptitiously through their window. This allowed the first young woman to get married. He did it again, and the second young woman got married. He similarly snuck some wealth for the young woman number 3, and they all avoided a life of degradation, thanks to presents flying in. From this, on the feast of St. Nicholas, December 6th, children receive secret gifts, as is still the case in many places. Martin Luther, grinding his axe against the saints, made the gift-giving a Christmas thing for Protestants, so the gifts down chimney in a bag given to children nexus, if one relaxes their mind somewhat, resembles the thing about St. Nicholas. Western culture's desire to give gifts to each other in December have much older roots. The Roman holiday of Saturnalia, which itself connected back to a Greek festival to Kronos, happened in late December and involved giving gag gifts to adult friends and toys to children. The holiday remained popular until the empire went Christian. The rest of Santa stems from Oden and later culture. In the Norse tradition, the midwinter festival Yule is often connected to Oden, who himself shares a connection to the northern latitudes, often sports a white beard and a hooded cloak, and rides a sky horse, to quote Margaret Baker in Discovering Christmas Customs and Folklore, a guide to seasonal rites throughout the world. The appearance of Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, whose day is the 25th of December, owes much to Oden, the old, blue-hooded, cloaked, white-bearded gift-bringer of the North, who rode the midwinter sky on his 8-footed steed Sleipnir, visited his people with gifts. Oden transformed into Father Christmas, then Santa Claus, prospered with St. Nicholas and the Christ child, became a leading player on the Christmas stage. From there, St. Nicholas, Saturnalia, and Oden get put into the blender of Dutch, British, and American popular culture of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, and out pops the modern, fat, red suit wearing, white bearded Christmas icon Santa Claus, departing the North Pole with flying steeds, breaking into people's houses, and delivering gifts to moderately well-behaved children. A lot of what we do works like this. We just don't often pause to think about it. Sometime in March or April, Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. The timing ties into the Jewish holiday of Passover, so sure, historically that fits. However, the name Easter comes from the name of a Germanic spring goddess with a connection to egg-laying bunnies. Christianity's core sacraments of communion and baptism come directly from Scripture, but they fit well into the wild mystery cults that experienced popularity during the same time that Christianity entered the scene. A lot of people expected their religion to have an entry rite and a members-only special rite. Christians came prepared. The scriptural names for Jesus often connect directly back to the names and titles given to the Roman Empire. We have a long history of taking existing non-Christian things and giving them new meaning or a new coat of paint. We like to draw hard lines between Christian and pagan. The Christian things replaced the pagan things. But history and the humans living in it seldom operate so cleanly. It's all blended from all over the place. Things get mixed, combined, stacked on top of each other. Saturnalia, a gift-giving saint, Oden, and the birth of Jesus tumble together in a cultural dryer to semi-Christianize the hero of the retail year. The resurrection of Christ, Germanic spring rites enter the mixer and come out as churches with egg hunts. Biblical literalists put elves on shelves, and church parking lots host trunk or treat events for All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day's semi-pagan cousin. The structure of our solar system and the Earth's place in it give a rhythm to human existence. Long before anything as formal as religion existed, humanity felt a natural draw to mark specific seasons as a special time. When the sun shows the least, sometime around a year's darkest day, we seem drawn to gather in close, to remind each other of the existence of warmth and share tokens, or massive quantities, of good cheer. When the long dark ends, we celebrate new life, new birth, and the return of beauty. When the year shifts from growing to harvesting, we gather to give thanks for the bounty. It all speaks to something more ancient and more powerful than dogma, that the nature of our world calls us to pause, remember, and celebrate. Our traditions for doing so build on top of each other in layers like sandstone because it all spoke of something far bigger and far beyond ourselves. The warmth of love in a dark world, the miracle of new life and renewal, and the thankfulness that comes from making it through another year. It all speaks of a divine pull and a divine truth. The alternative name for that essay could have been everything's a little bit pagan sometimes.
Right?
Like everything's
Yes.
everything's a little bit of everything.
Right. The big blender of holidays, of holy days, right? The origin of our word holidays is this tradition in humanity that is celebrated through all of the cultures, right? Anthropologically, you can go back into different cultures and find harvest celebrations across the mix. Mm-hmm. You can find winter solstice celebrations that center around gift giving, gathering, warmth, lighting candles, all of these things. There are some universal truths there to our human existence throughout history.
And and all of that still exists, and all of that is all happening all at once. It's just we try to kind of backhand Christianize or utterly reject that. Again, this is my line about biblical literalists putting elves on shelves. Right. That this is an elf is not a Christian concept. This is a real Norse thing, and we the magic spy elf. I think that's
I have some issues with Elf on the Shelf. Maybe I just have some trauma with Elf on the Shelf because it's difficult. We don't actually do Elf on the Shelf. Do y'all do Elf on the Shelf?
No, God, no.
No, because it's just this idea of this behavior watching. You better watch out or you're gonna get caught. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Santa Claus, I don't like this part of St. Nicholas tradition. And going back in the tradition, it's become more popular recently. People are more aware now because it's in movies in Hollywood, but of Krampus. Right? Of the you better be good or else person, the other Santa Claus, the darker side of Santa Nicholas. The dark Santa. Right. The what's going to happen if you don't do good.
I'm gonna be honest. My approach to Santa Claus is to neither confirm nor deny his existence.
Right.
I do not like the concept of lying to children.
Right.
I don't have any issue. Clearly, I just wrote this whole thing. Everything's a little bit pagan sometimes. Fucking deal with it. It's fine. It's okay. Everybody just take a massive chill pill. And stop trying to make up where this comes from, right? Santa Claus is a combination of Oden, Saturnalia. I left out the Coca Cola Corporation's role.
Oh yeah, or the Night Before Christmas, Sarah Hale, right?
But I personally, we don't have Elf on Shelf. I find that creepy. We recently on one of our other shows talked about the omniscience of God and how that's actually kind of a good thing. And this is the Santa is only the negative version of the omniscience of God. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're. This is awful.
This is the creepy part.
And I don't like lying to children. I don't like that, the rug pull of oh, psych, it's not real, kid. That's so funny. I don't. So my kids do, and maybe someday they'll pick up on this, but I never talk about Santa Claus. They'll talk about Santa Claus. I say nothing.
Right. Well, and at our house, because I feel the same way about, okay, we're going to teach you about this imaginary benevolent thing.
Semi-benevolent.
A
lot of B&E on his record.
With a white beard, but you can't see him. And then someday you're going to realize that, there is no Santa Claus that as we have portrayed him. But also we've taught you about God, who is this invisible, benevolent force in the world. But that one's real, right? This one wasn't, but this one, this is just not good practice for parenting. But I am the same way. We don't really talk about Santa Claus in our house. We neither confirm nor deny, but our kids see Santa in the Christmas parade, right? But they also see, Rudolph and Olaf from Frozen, and these are all just characters, right?
Oh, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade added there's a new reindeer.
Oh.
Clearly, I think designed by the Macy's. I don't remember their name, but there's a smaller child reindeer that is different, has a light up nose, I think, but is so we've added another layer to the sandstone of that. Now not only is there Santa, I love his Mrs. Claus, right? Saint Nicholas wasn't married,
right?
So there is no Mrs. Santa Claus. Anyways, but we've added Mrs. Claus and we've added the reindeer, and then it was related to Schleipnir.
The dentist.
Yes.
Elf.
Yeah, and then we added Rudolph. And now there is the Macy's Corporation has added another, and I'm making fun of this because it's corporatism, but that is, we should do an episode of this someday. That is American religion. But the sandstone keeps piling up that a holiday timed to Saturnalia. We have no idea. Jesus was not born in December.
Right.
So, but anyways, the sand, the tumble dryer of culture and all the ways we want to celebrate the season continues on apace.
Yeah. You didn't even include my favorite St. Nicholas legend. And you can see this one in a lot of stained glass, is that the pickle barrel Santa. Right? And I don't know if this is where the pickle comes from, like the Christmas pickle. Does it have to do with the
Probably,
Christmas pickle?
right? That's logical.
I don't know if that's where it comes from or not, but it's the so apparently there was a butcher who fell on hard times who abducted 3 boys and turned them into pickles, was trying to sell them as pickled ham. But the legend is Saint Nicholas comes and recognizes the atrocity that's happened and resurrects the pickle barrel boys. And so you'll see in old artwork this figure of Saint Nicholas with 3 little boys looking reverently up at him from their pickle barrels, but it looks like they're just 3 children that can't afford clothes,
right?
Because they're just in barrels. And so to people who were unfamiliar with the story, it looks like this is the patron saint of children because he's just very benevolent to poor children.
And he is.
Yes.
But also.
And so there's just a lot of very interesting Santa legends out there when you start to delve down the sandstone layers. There's some really funny things in there.
Well, and not everything that gets associated with Santa Claus, Saint Nick, Father Christmas, or in the kind of low countries, Sinterklaas. Some of it is slowly. The sandstone is getting eroded away because at some point we do need to bring up Zwarte Piet.
Oh,
so
Zwarte Piet.
when I was a kid in Belgium in the 90s, this is not that long ago, Sinterklaas was accompanied by Zwarte Piet, his black slave, played by a white person in blackface. And so I should remember what port Sinterklaas lands on, but on like Belgian and Dutch television was the arrival of Sinterklaas. This is their version of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I guess.
Oh dear.
And accompanying him in the year of our Lord 1995 was Zwarte Piet, Black Pete. Clearly Santa's black slave, but as a white person in black. This
is problematic,
and that does seem to be blessedly that part is getting eroded away, and so Macy's has added a new reindeer to stack back on top.
Other cultures have turned Zwarte Piet into Sooty Pete, so he's just black because he's gone down the chimney and gotten covered in sweat.
Yes, but the Low Countries, that's not how Sinterklaas gets in. You put your shoe outside.
Right, and it's shoes, not socks.
Right, yeah. It's the wooden shoe. It's you have your Dutch, so you have the shoes that float, and so you have the clogs. I guess is that the English word clog? Mm-hmm. Anyway, you have your clogs, and you set that out, and so it's also not a retail bonanza because the toy needs to fit. Idea is the toy fits in the shoe. Now, this is a pretty great deal when you're like a 9-year-old in Belgium because you're like, oh, we're gonna do Sinterklaas, and then we're still gonna do Christmas. Mwah, beautiful. It was great.
So, but this idea of gift giving, this idea of coming together to celebrate in the dead of winter, I mean, there's a reason that all of these things have conglomerated into this legend of Santa Claus that we now have today, right? But I think as Christians, people are either very like, oh, we're going to put Santa kneeling in the manger scene. Right?
He was alive 300 years later.
Or something like that because we get afraid of like, this is pagan, this is Christian. None of these, ne'er the tween shall meet, right?
Or we just utterly ignore that. And just like happily put up Christmas trees and happily sell pumpkins and happily host trunk or treats and it was like, oh, well, we would never do anything pagan. Then what are we doing here on All Hallows Eve? Right. Like what?
Why is there an Easter egg hunt after your sunrise service on Easter? Right? Like this is an Easter bunny.
Please, someone tell me the Jesus purpose for the Easter bunny. Like where does that all? No, it's Oyster. It's the Greek spring goddess who seems kind of fun because there's this whole great section on her Wikipedia page and it's like egg laying hair, and I'm like, oh, I know that guy. This is the Easter Bunny. I've met him. That's because I've wondered where the eggs came from. Right. I wondered but this is a bunny. Why isn't it a chicken? It's not a chicken. It's an egg-laying bunny.
Right. Or it's not Easter eggs. Have you seen, they sell them, Cokesbury sells them, the resurrection eggs.
Yes.
Right, that tell the story of Jesus. And it's a
Sure,
great
it's
tool to teach children about the resurrection of Christ. But it has to come out of an Easter egg because you have to figure out a way to make that Christian. Right?
Yeah.
Or something.
And I think, like, if I have a thesis statement for this, it is, what if it didn't, like we just like chill out. Like chill out. Like fucking chill. Like it's
okay.
It's okay because clearly, right, like we keep wanting to just like paper over it or like stack up or like whitewash it. And we did this, we Christians hundreds of years ago did very similar things to, in the colonial context, to your local deity becomes a saint, your local deity's miracle becomes a saint story, your local goddess gets replaced with the Virgin Mary. Like this is like Santa is like the mild, funny version of this process. There are way darker, like culture destroying versions of this, but we get so terrified, I think, or like so hyper fixated that there's just this one way, and there's this one way it has to be, and everything has to be subordinate to that, whether that is like all other previously existing European tradition that we are still just living out, or it is, the scientific evidence of fossils, or like it's all this same instinct that like, no, it's got to be this like one narrow set of things, and if it and anything else that looks anything else like that must be Christianized, deleted, or destroyed.
Well, I do believe that much of these things, they're symbolic of something much deeper seated. Right. And I think you hit that toward the end of the essay, is that, our response is, how are these things Christian?
Right.
But I don't think that, I think that that's a really narrow way of looking at these things. Santa Claus, for instance, it's funny. A fat man in a red suit with his big beard and jolly ho-ho-hos.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all silly. But at the heart of it, the symbol of Santa Claus not only represents something in human society and human understanding today, but has also meant something historically over time to different people.
Right.
And so whenever we exclusively look for ways that this is Christian, instead of looking at where the figure Santa comes from, we should look instead at how the fundamental principles, what this symbol points to, is a very Christian concept. And there's ways that we can bring that to life with these stories today if we get over where these came from, who's it stolen from, what did it mean then? This is all a living story. And you do hit that in the last paragraph of the essay, that this is an unfolding of things.
But I also, where I think the other place my head went in, admittedly, other than I wanted to find as many synonyms for Santa and Saint Nick as possible, the hero of the retail year, right? Is like the majority of human history is pre-Christian history, right? So for the I don't know how the math works out, because there sure are a lot of humans alive today. So I don't know if it's for the majority of humans. I used to have these numbers in my head, and I just don't. But so for the majority of human history, it was pre-Christian history. Mm-hmm. Especially if you take the kind of the genetic anthropology approach to the age of our species of like close to 1 million years. Mm-hmm. And Jesus was born, as a historical man 2,000 years ago. And so we had been, humanity had been experiencing something for a long time before we had the birth of Christ, or it's steering into some Easter stuff too, right? The resurrection of Christ to celebrate. Before those became major history-defining events, and as a Christian person, I do believe that those are. I think whether you believe he was the Son of God or not, those two events are definitely history-defining. Yes. I think that's true of an objective study of history, but that's not what I mean. Like, so we clearly were experiencing, like, we get in this head, and I struggle with it of like, so was everything fake before? And now all of a sudden, here's the and now only in the last 2,000 years have we gotten the real stuff.
Right.
To use my favorite Luke Timothy Johnson, my New Testament professor, it's just the Greek word for divine power. He just says it's the dunamis, right? Were we only experiencing the dunamis in the past 2,000 years?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't feel true. Did humanity just only really leap forward in the last 2,000 years?
Well, and John 1:1, right?
Yep.
In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And so Christ as Logos is not something that began
Right.
in our Christmas narrative.
Right.
Jesus, or Christ, has been at work holding things together and at play throughout.
For literal forever. Yeah.
Forever. And so I this essay brings up a real critical point to me, because I hear a lot, especially as a New Age Christian, I hear a lot of people.
Goddamn hippie.
I know. But I hear a lot of people talking about how Christianity is going with society, or, is this right or is that right? And really, ultimately, when I turn to scripture like John 1:1, what that really reminds me of is that Christ's fingerprints and work are over all of this shit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking thousands of years prior to our birth narrative. Christ's work and fingerprints are on it all. So to me, when digging in and saying, well, this is also present in pagan culture, therefore Christianity is practicing paganism.
Yes.
That's not what I see.
Sure.
What I see is human history with the fingerprints of God and Christ all over it. Yes. And us as human society today still figuring out what that means.
Yes. I heard, so one of my feeds this morning was a female clergy who was talking about the people that we only see on Christmas and Easter, right? And why they probably still only come, but they will come. We call them our CEOs, our Christmas, Easter onlys, right? Those damn CEOs of the church, right? But they still come at those two times in particular because they know that the message that they hear will be a positive one, and they can get past the dogma that you see in the rest of the year, right? Humanity is still searching for the positive and the divine, that connection.
Well, and also it's just the next version of, I think for some people, it's the next version of the winter solstice tradition and the spring solstice tradition, the spring equinox tradition, that doesn't have anything like its original meaning, but you practice it because humanity has that like deeply ingrained desire to gather.
Yeah.
And so you don't think of yourself as having any religious belief. And yet, because of the nature of our world, and to your point, like the imprint of God, the presence of the dunamis, the presence of divine power, like you feel drawn together into these ritual spaces, but it is something far less defined, but it is this like clearly deeply ingrained pull.
Before we knew Christian theology or the words that we use as Christians, there were parts of being human that we collectively found to draw comfort, to experience love together, to motivate one another, to support one another. In the essay, you actually wrote, love, right? Or focus this around love, that there are these moments throughout human history prior to the language we use that emphasize this love. Even today, in the essay, you use the term for Santa, what was it? The
hero of the retail year?
Hero of the retail year. And although that's very true, Emily, you're saying that this remains a time when people still show up in churches, they still show up at families' houses, and maybe a lot of that has to do with Santa Claus and gift giving and the culture that we've held on to, as problematic as it can sometimes be and as ambiguous as it can sometimes be.
It's a little wildly capitalistic, right? Like
It is, but otherwise people would be going to the stores on Black Friday and purchasing things for themselves only.
Right.
Yes.
As opposed to the gift giving that is.
And that's a part of this story still having relevancy in how we live as Christians today, is keeping that generosity, that caregiving as first and foremost at the front of these celebrations.
Yes.
Well, it's also like one of the so this comes from kind of the study of secularism, which is and kind of Christianity's the way this is where another guy that's on the
secular
age, which is I think visible in Emily's shot.
Yep,
Yeah, they're actually
right
you can see it once you can see it. So Charles Taylor's Secular Age. That one of the things that particularly a certain kind of Protestant Christianity, of which we are descended, we as Methodists are descended, just flattened all reality. Mm-hmm. The hey, Christmas is just another day, and that can really demystify I think what a lot of this is about is that there just seems like these really mystical times. Mm-hmm. There are just mystical seasons. Mm. There are seasons where we just over from the most religious pre-science eras to now our hyper-capitalistic hellspace, our secular age.
Yeah.
We are just we just gather and we just these things and we build up all these traditions, but it kind of just keeps spontaneously happening across cultures. And so it is this it is a reminder of the humanities, we are drawn to the sacred. We are not actually naturally drawn to every day is a Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have, and I think about, I listened to this amazing interview, Patrick Klepek over at remap.com, this video game website that I love. Patrick is obsessed with Halloween and scary movies and decorating for Halloween. And he bought the 12-foot Home Depot skeleton. Mm-hmm. And he interviewed, Patrick is a tremendous journalist, and he interviewed the guy that led the design team for the 12-foot skeleton. And they can't keep those things on the shelves.
Right.
They cannot keep those things on the shelves. And the interview of this guy is just living his best life. He just loves the holidays. And he used to work in gardening or tools. And then he finally got on the holiday team. And it was joyous. But he talked about people have just overwhelmingly respond them. They love these 12-foot statues. And as I drive around Houston in October, it used to be people didn't decorate, people put up Christmas lights. Mm-hmm. But they didn't decorate for Halloween. Now decorating for Halloween is this huge thing because guess what? We had flattened reality. We're not a farming. I'm not a farming person. That's Emily. But very few people are living these super agrarian lives. And so we'd flatten reality, and now all of a sudden there is this profusion of the celebration of the harvest, mm-hmm. That is 12-foot skeletons. It just keeps happening.
Right. So this is Cindy Lou Who, right? This is Cindy Lou Who in How the Grinch Stole Christmas singing, "Where are you, Christmas?" Right? She's looking for the true meaning. And of course they find it by the end, which is community.
Right.
Right. It is this connection that we have with one another. It's coming together and celebrating something that is beyond ourselves, right? It is the love and the warmth that we share. It is this connection with the sacred. It is seeking the divine. I was talking to my cousin this morning, and he asked me, he said, so do you have trouble finding the magic of Christmas, or the how it used to be when we were kids? Yeah. And I said, well, it's different for me now because I have kids. So I get to be part of the magic of Christmas, part of the magic of this celebration. But also, are you participating in your community festivals? Are you going to the Christmas tree lightings or the parades, or are you going to the candlelight service on Christmas Eve, right? That place where you found connection before. in celebrating the traditions of the holidays, that is where we find connection to one another as well as to the divine.
Well, and to, kind of pull a little more on Charles Taylor, like to live extraordinarily in extraordinary times. That, Lent is this way too. Lent is just the opposite, right? Like Lent is like, we're going to suffer for 40, we're not going to suffer that way every day.
Right.
We're going to suffer special. to give texture
We're
to
gonna fast specially for this.
We're gonna suffer specially. It's this next 4 days gonna fucking suck, man. Right? Like we're gonna suffer specially for this special season in our winter whatever. Right? We keep like wanting to live in these extravagantly generous ways and extravagantly community oriented ways because you think the long dark is. Even in our modern light-filled world, we still feel the long dark. And that long dark, then we have this holiday, we keep having this holiday where we come together. And it is giving like specialness to special times. And that like we kind of have to challenge ourselves to do that in our modern world where, your boss can always reach you and, you can always be working and whatever. You can always be living out that grind set of like, no, mark this time as special. Yeah. Go do something extraordinary in this extraordinary season.
Yeah. In our times of like modern luxury, it's real easy for us to sit around and dig deep and poke fun at a lot of these traditions and things. But like you're saying, the dark times, we have no idea what that reality is like. Forming this celebration, Christmas, Saturnalia, Yule,
Kwanzaa.
all of these things, talking about which one's right or which one's wrong is one thing, but to actually look at the heart of all of it, to recognize that at the time, these dark times are not just, there's less daylight. These are times of loss. These are times of insecurity, not knowing how what you have in store is what you have. You're losing loved ones. The cold is taking up. People are getting colds or disease, things like this. So the community part of this, recognizing God in this time or the divine or the forces that we can't quite understand, it was really important. And these rituals aren't. We tend to want to think of them as satanic rituals that are anti-Christian, but these rituals are designed from human need and human expression. And I think it's beautiful that a modern Christianity can look back into its history and say, we recognize that God has been at work in people.
And so I think where I land in all of this is like, these special times is an experience of divine power, but that is far older than dogmatic structures.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or as I said earlier, or were all the other rituals bullshit?
Right.
Were all the other solstice and equinox rituals bullshit? And then all of a sudden, only in the last 2,000 years did we get the real shit like that. That does not feel like how God works.
Right. I think that we as Christians just need to be comfortable with our history, our own history, like looking back at this and going, yes, this is St. Nicholas. Also, St. Nick punched a heretic, right? Like, this is okay.
He did. Let's be clear.
Gifts,
he
punch
did not.
heretics,
He did
celebrate
not.
the season.
He did not. He might have. He might have given those girls this gift. He was like a he had the wealth to do that.
Right.
And that story,
Giving away
that
his
story
doubt,
pops up relatively early. Unfortunately, him doing the dirt on Arius only develops like hundreds of years later.
Right. When they needed him to be extra pious is when you get this story of him punching heretics.
Because he's not on all the lists, it's not even clear he was even there, historically there.
You know.
So, he didn't.
Maybe, right? But still. But celebrating that generosity in the person of St. Nicholas, celebrating the season of gift giving, right? That Jesus is the reason for the season part, right? But also maybe not just Jesus, right?
Or rather, Jesus is the reason for the season, but not the way you think.
Right. But also, here's all of these other traditions that can conglomerate together into this beautiful piece of celebration that we can have during this time of year.
I also think this is becoming comfortable with God's bigness.
Yes.
That we like to tell the story that the dogma we have can contain all of God. But what that ends up with is that only a very small percentage of humans across human history and modern humans are experiencing something real. And everybody else who seems to also be having meaningful experiences of the divine dunamis. The dunamis. Thank you, Luke Timothy Johnson. What a man. It's all bullshit. Right? Anytime I butt up against the concept of other religions, I become really uncomfortable because what that statement I just said, that sounds wrong. That I understand that is the literal dogma of Christianity. There's one way to the Father, and it is through me. I can. Yes, I know. Christianity makes an exclusivist claim, and we'll do another. I suspect we'll do another episode someday, maybe soon, more explicitly about other religions. But this is also this is in some ways a conversation about other religions because it's finding out that we also kind of dabble in other religions. I open with this essay. It's you dabble in other religions all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
So let me ask this. So circa 1990s.
Yeah.
In high school or middle school or high school, being told by a friend about, did you know that Jesus wasn't really born in December?
Yeah.
And that actually what we're celebrating is Saturnalia. At the time, to log into AOL and get information.
Keyword Saturnalia.
Regarding Saturnalia and the claims that this young man was explaining to me was difficult. But I did it.
Yeah.
Today, you can get that same information, if not more, by scrolling through TikTok and seeing a 20-second clip. So what do we say to people today who have access to this information, which can fearfully be faith imposing?
Yeah.
What do we say? How does this fit into a contemporary context? Because there are still faith traditions out there telling people don't read anything other than the Bible. Oh, did you just say Saturnalia? Get your mind off of that. Don't think any further. That's just the devil trying to do his work in you. What do we say to folks who are genuinely coming up to these points, recognizing these things about their faith, and then maybe backing away because they're not sure if this is right and how to do this in a responsible way?
I think part of it is the thing I think we end up saying every episode, which is maybe hold us all a little more loosely. Maybe hold this all a little more loosely.
That doesn't mean it's not important.
That doesn't mean it's not important. Actually, right? I am a woodworker, not a metal worker, right? And part of why I'm a woodworker is wood is amazing, because it is both sturdy and flexible, right? Metal's brittle. You can tell me there are non-brittle metals, and I don't care. I was a terrible welder, and I'm not going to. I'm better able to stop myself from cutting myself than I am from setting things on fire. But the beauty of wood as a construction material, and why we still use it in the modern day, right? We still, here in a hurricane-prone area, most of the houses are built from wood, because. Why does wood exist at all, right? So that the tree can bend and not break, right? That a tree holds its upright position loosely. It can bend, it can flex, and that gives it strength. That flexibility is not a sign of weakness, but generally speaking is a sign of strength. A person who is physically flexible is less likely to injure themselves than a muscled out Hulk who maybe never skipped arm day, but definitely skipped the stretches, right? Like, there is strength in flexibility. And also remember, God is bigger than you. God is bigger than me. God is bigger than all the people who tried to write about God. And we're all trying, but God is far bigger than that.
Right. So it's your second favorite F word, flexibility.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we all just need to be
fucking
more
flexible
in all of this, right? To be more open, to be comfortable in the gray areas, to be all right with not being right all the time.
And to do it together.
Yeah.
I think that may be it as well. To sit in my own thoughts in solitude at any given moment can end up being a very toxic process. And I would like to see, and do see, a Christianity which is opening up its embrace and allowing these conversations to happen.
Yes.
Well, and when we can celebrate that people are experiencing what I would, to stop using my favorite Greek word today, one of my favorite Greek words, what I would say is the love and power of God, right? If God is love, then any place where you're experiencing love is of God.
Yes.
And we have constructed, and this is a place where we've at least constructed it on some direct biblical material. A lot of, when we talk about, excluding LGBTQ people, we built this whole wobbly pyramid and almost no biblical data. I'll give Christian theology a little bit of credit. This is at least directly stated in multiple places, unlike things like don't have sex before marriage, which just isn't really there. Right. This is a less wobbly pyramid in terms of the biblical data you're working on. But also, there are a lot of pieces of the Bible that everybody holds flexibly. I think some point in the new year, we're going to do, maybe like February or March, we're going to do an episode specifically on the nature of Scripture, because I think that is where a lot of this comes back to is, well, Scripture says this. Sometimes it literally doesn't. This time, at least literally does. But just because it literally does, doesn't always mean, and has never always meant at any point in Jewish or Christian history, that is just naturally how everything works.
Right. Don't build your house out of metal.
Right.
Build it out of wood.
Right. We do not listen to Three Little Pigs. Right. Like, actually, the thing that was probably, the house of wood was probably going to withstand it. If you have thoughts on this or hate mail about how utterly pagan we are, fine. So are you. Merry Christmas. DivineProvisionsCo@gmail.com. That is DivineProvisionsCo@gmail.com. We are indeed the Divine Provisions Co., and we need your help. Like, comment, subscribe, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, share something you find meaningful. We post a whole bunch of shorts from all of this stuff. And so those are really particularly shareable. We post content in a lot of places. Instagram, TikTok, that's Divine Provisions C. It's Divine Provisions Co. everywhere else. Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, YouTube, and our website, divineprovisions.co. Speaking of our website, if how you would like to support us is support us financially, Lord knows things like studios and the travel to get us all together cost money. You can give via our donate button on our website. That is divineprovisions.co. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Saturnalia. Take hold of that Yule log and run with it. And we'll see you next time.